We're learning as a kos before Shleima Filan Chai Basarach. The Motzei Shabbos are always the best. Full crowd. Especially like we get a fuller crowd before Pesach when there's a lot of work to be done. Um, so we're on Daf, I think Samach Amud Beis, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. On Samach Amud Beis, we're up to Reb Shimon Omer, which is about 12, 13 lines from the bottom, from the top. But I'm just going to remind us of what we had in the Mishnah. The Mishnah discussed, it started with Hagasha and Tnufa.
Good talk. Where are we?
Hagasha on Samach Amud Beis.
Thank you.
So we're just looking at the Mishnah on Samach Amud Aleph. But the Mishnah says, it talks about the dinim of Hagasha, which is you bring the mincha. It's something that's specifically by a mincha. We're not talking about animals. You take the mincha and you bring it close to the mizbeach and you actually touch it to the mizbeach. And tenufa is waving the mincha. So we say there are some minchas that need hagasha, but they don't need tenufa, which is going to be the subject that we're going to discuss. Then you have those that need hagasha utnufa. Tenufa v'lei hagasha, v'lei tenufa v'lei hagasha. Go through all four permutations are possible. And then it says these are the ones that need hagasha and don't need tenufa. They need to be touched to the mizbeach, but they don't need to be waved. And it says the lists all of the minchas nedava, the different types, which are silas out of flour and machas and macheshes, which are different types of pans that the minchas nedava is made, and the chalas or kikim, which are different sizes or thicknesses of baking in the oven. And then we say minchas kain and minchas kain mashiach, the minchas brought by kaihanim and minchas kain mashiach, minchas nachem, minchas nashim, or minchas chayt. And the minchas chayta is the mincha brought by the carbon oil of a yard that someone does those specific chatoim. Then we have at the end Reb Shimon Omer, minchas kehanim, minchas kain mashiach, ein behem hagasha. He disagrees. We said that these have hagasha with no tenufa. He agrees they don't have tenufa, but he says they also don't have hagasha. Whatever doesn't have kmitza doesn't have hagasha. Okay. So then, that was the Mishnah. So the Gemara is continuing about the first portion of the Mishnah, which was things that need hagasha and don't need tenufa. And the next Mishnah is going to continue on with the listing of the things that the other permutations. And the Gemara started with the Tanakama. We said it was started a long brisa, and the Tanakama said, where do we know Minani, Minchas Chayta Minayin. So the Tanakama says, where do you know a Minchas Chayta, which is one of the things that we listed that needs Hagasha but doesn't need Tnufa? So we learn it out from Etz HaMincha. So we wanted to say, let's learn it out from a Kal V'chaimer, from Saita, and Minchas Chayva, Minchas Chayta. So we said, he answered up, he said, you can't learn it out from the Kal V'chaimer, and you can't even learn it out from Mitzad HaShava, and that's why you need the pasuk to tell you Minchas Chayta that it needs Hagasha. So now we're up to Rav Shimon. So he used the pasuk vehevesa to tell you minchas chayta. Rav Shimon says, I'm sorry, not vehevesa. He says it's es mincha to tell you minchas chayta. Now Rav Shimon is continuing. Rav Shimon's not being chaylik. It's a continuation of the brayso. So Rav Shimon is now saying, we've learned minchas chayta. Now I'm going to teach you something else in addition. Rav Shimon's going to be chaylik with Rav Yehuda about what the source of this next thing is. Rav Shimon aimer vehevesa l'rabes minchas ha'aimer l'hagasha. The pasuk says, "Vehevesa es hamincha asher yasa me'ela l'Hashem ve'kriya l'kayin." This is talking about the mincha, the regular mincha, the mincha snedava, and it says "Lashon vehevesa." That tells you mincha ha'omer also needs hagasha. V'cheinu ma'omer vehevesa ha'omer reishis k'tirchem alakayin, because you use lashon of vehevesa by omer. It says vehevesa bes omer, and it says vehevesa by the mincha snedava, where we said a din of hagasha. So that tells you there's also hagasha by the omer. The kriba L'Rabbis Minchas Saitel Hagasha. Vehikriva is good. So that's what we see Ha'imer. And from the word Vehikriva, that tells you Minchas Saitel needs Hagasha. Because if you remember, one of the sources in the Tanakama, one of the studim that we want to learn out the Minchas Chayta from was from Saita. But what do we know Saita? So he says, if you learn out from Vehikriva. Tayyar says, you should bring it to the Mizbeach. What does it have to tell you that for? So it's to tell you that it has a din Agash. Vidinu. The Gemara asks, again, what do we need a pasuk for the din of Omer? Well, let's learn it out from a Kabbalah Chaimer. Like we learned, like the Tanakama taught us. She'ena tuna tnufa, does not need tnufa. Tuna agasha, but it needs agasha. Minchas saita, she's tuna tnufa. Ena din she tuna agasha. Minchas saita was not listed in our Mishnah as amongst those things that need hagasha and doesn't need tnufa, because it does need tnufa. So minchas, if tuna saita needs tnufa, certainly it's going to need hagasha. So no, you can't learn it out. What's special about the minchas chayta? That it's brought from wheat, not from barley. And we're trying to learn out the minchas chayta. The minchas chayta is brought from barley. So come on, minchas aimer techich. I'll prove it to you from the minchas aimer. Minchas aimer, like we said, has hagasha. So therefore, certainly the minchas chayta should. You can't say you can't learn out from the Eimer to Saita, because the Eimer needs both oil and the vina, and the Minchas Saita doesn't. You know, a Minchas Saita and a Minchas Chaita, those are supposed to be unattractive. Those are certainly not things that come for happy reasons. They're not adorned with shemen and levina. The Gemara says Minchas Chaita techiach. Minchas Chaita doesn't have shemen and levina, and it still has hagasha. So between Minchas Chayta and Minchas Ha'aymer, let's learn out Minchas Chayta. Chazar adin l'roizek roizev l'roizek roizeh. That's not a shavu zera to shavu l'kmitza. They both require kmitza. The shavu l'hagasha, and they need hagasha. But the avi Minchas Chayta. Sheshav savlei l'han kmitza. It has kmitza. Tefil l'hagasha. Don't need hagasha. So Gemara, no. Malat tzad shavu shebehen. How are Minchas Ha'aymer Minchas Chayta different from the Chayta? They're not allowed to be brought from standard flour. They have to be from Silas or from Girsha. Silas is well-ground flour, wheat flour, and Girsha is well-ground barley flour. So both the Saita and the Chayta and the Eimer, are brought. Both the Chayta and the Eimer are brought from well-ground types of flour, but the Saita can be brought from a regular flour, so it's less. Maybe that's the reason why those two have hagasha, and something that has regular flour doesn't have such fine flour, doesn't get hagasha. Talmud loim b'vikriva. That's what we needed. Shimon said we need the pasuk of vikriva. These are long gemaras. These brisa has long pieces, which is just like we had in the first part of Tanakama. We say a pasuk to learn that something needs hagasha. Then we say, why don't you learn after a kal v'chaymer? We try to say it's tzara shava. We blow up the tzara shava, and then we go back to the original pasuk. And that's what we did in the first Gemara. We did that legabi minchas chayta, and now we're doing that legabi saita. Rabbi Yehuda disagrees with Rav Shimon. Rav Shimon just learned out. He learned out saita. He said v'heves l'rabes minchas ha'emer, and v'ikriva is l'rabes minchas saita l'hagasha. V'yuda v'heves l'rabes minchas saita l'hagasha. He does not learn out minchas saita like Reb Shimon did from v'hikriva. He learns it out from v'heves. V'cheinu ha'emer v'hevi es karbane alel. It says v'hevi by the minchas saita, and it says v'heves by the minchas and davos. You learn it out. Learn out the saita from minchas and davos. Our minchas ha'emer leitzircha kro. So right, we had said v'heves. Rav Shimon had said v'heves tell you minchas ha'emer. He said to tell you the Saita. So where is he going to learn out Minchas Ha'omer from? He says you don't need a pasuk. My time, he learns it out Minchas Ha'omer from a Kal V'Chaimer. Bedina Ka'asha. Umam Minchas Chait she'ena tuna tnufa. Tuna Hagasha Minchas Chait. It doesn't need tnufa, needs Hagasha. Minchas Ha'omer she'etuna tnufa ain't din she'etuna Hagasha. It certainly should need Hagasha. Dr. Mar, no, you can't learn out Minchas Ha'omer from Minchas Chait. And Mal Minchas Chait she'chein ba'achitin. It's brought from wheat, and the Omer is brought from barley. Maybe that's the reason why it needs Hagasha. Dr. Mar, Minchas Saita Techich, approve of Minchas Saita, which is brought from wheat. Mala Minchas Saita shechein ba'alevarer. It's brought from barley, just like the Omer. So Gemara, Mala Minchas Saita shechein ba'alevarer oven. No, you can't learn that from Saita, because Saita is coming to determine whether the woman was mizana or not. And the Gemara quotes, even though some take it out, the mascaris oven. The Torah says mascaris oven. It's a way of determining whether it was an oven. So maybe on that you need Hagasha, but not on Omer. So the Gemara Minchas Chayta Techiv. Approve from Minchas Chayta, which is not mascaris oven. It's not to determine a chait. It's for someone who did a chait. The site is to find out whether the woman was mizana. Minchas Chayta is to someone who was mizana, who was Iver b'shoigim. V'chazara did. So we can learn it out from between the two of them, from Saita together with Chayta. Lo roi zeh roi zeh, lo roi zeh roi zeh. Asal Shabbos and Shechein shavu l'kmitza. They both need a kmitza. V'shavu l'hagasha. They both need hagasha. Ani evi Minchas Ha'omer, so I'll be able to learn Minchas Ha'omer. Sheshavsu lehen l'kmitza tishrin l'hagasha. Should have hagasha. So Gemara, umay pirchas. My pirchas. What is the my parachta? What is the pircha of Rav Shimon? Rav Shimon said that we have to learn out Minchas Ha'omer from a pasuk. Why didn't he learn from the Kal V'Chaimer, the Tzad Hashava that Rabbi Yehuda just said? Rav Shimon Parachachi. Rav Shimon has the following question on this Tzad Hashava. Ma'ala Tzad Hashava, and what's the Tzad Hashava of Saita and Chayta that you can't learn out Omer? Shechem Mitzuyin. Both the Minchas Chayta and the Minchas Saita are brought for Averis, so they can happen every day of the year. Masha Enki, the Omer, is only one day a year. So the ones that could be every day are more common than the one Minchas Omer, which is only brought on Shavuos. Not on Shavuos, I'm sorry. On the second day of Pesach. Rabbi Yehuda Adarabah, Hamatzu Yitvei. He said Rabbi Yehuda disagrees. He says no. The Omer is more Motzei. Hanat Zinin Mishkas Klal. The Saita and the Chayta, we hope that they never happen, and they might never happen a whole year. Masha Engin the Omer you do every single year. Okay, so that's why he had to use the Hevesa. He had to have. That's why Reb Shimon said you have to learn it out from a pasuk, and Rabbi Yehuda says you learn it out Minchas Omer from Kal V'Chaimer. But both of them used Vehevesa. One used Vehevesa for the Minchas Omer, and one used it for the Saita. Dr. Mara Yene Vehevesa Ella Sheyachin Misnadebu maybe Mincha Cheres Chutz Meila. Maybe Hevesa is telling you a whole different thing. It's not telling you anything to do with Hagasha. Maybe it's coming to tell you that a Yachid, if he wants, can bring a different carbon from the ones that I mentioned. We mentioned a whole list of different types: a marcheshes and a machvas and rikikin and matzois. Maybe you could bring a different one, which the Gemara is going to explain, meaning one made out of barley. V'dinu tzibur maybe mincha menachitin chayva, or maybe mincha menasoirin chayva. If the tzibur, by the Omer, brings both from wheat and from barley. Maybe a yachid who's being menadev, he decides he wants to bring a mincha, maybe he could also bring from barley. Talmud Leimer, Eila. That's what the pasuk says. It's only these things. Ein li ella ela. You can only bring from these things that I mentioned. Sagt the Gemara, ein li ella ela. Eina oimer, maybe you'll say, ela is for different things. Ella oimer harei alai mincha. It's only for somebody who says, I'm going to bring a mincha, maybe chamishasan. Maybe when it's saying ela, it's coming to tell you that someone who says, I want to bring a nadava of a mincha, and the pasuk lists, like we said, 5 different types, a machvas and a macheshes, chalois and rikikin, and then we said there's also mandama who says you could bring a combination, a mitzvah bachar, came to learn, very nice. Tamalaima me'ela. That's what the Torah, that's what the pasuk tells you. Me'ela ratza echas maybe ratza chamishasa maybe. It's coming to tell you don't have to bring all 5. You can bring any one of the 5 different types of minchas. Rav Shimon Omer, the pasuk continues. Rav Shimon Omer, es ha mincha l'rabis shar menachos, k'ay minchas nachrim, minchas nashim, l'hagasha. The Mishnah continued, listed a bunch of karbanos that are brought, the minchas that are brought that need a hagasha, and it says the same. We learn from es ha mincha to tell you other ones. One's brought by goyim, and one's brought by women. Also need hagasha. Rav Shimon in our Mishnah had said shtei halechem panim are excluded because they don't have kmitza. So maybe shtei halechem panim are also included. Tamalayim me'ela. It says me'ela, not ela, but me'ela from these. So not all of them, coming to exclude lechem apanim and shtei halechem. Why are we including the mincha of a nashim and mincha of a guy, and we're excluding the shtei lechem apanim? So I'm going to include the other ones that part of it is burnt on the mizbeach. The kaimitz is burnt on the mizbeach. That there's no knitz on them, that the whole thing is eaten by the bailim or by the kehanim, it's all been by them. Sorry, by the kehanim. Then no part of it is burnt on the mizbeach. If that's the case, if you're saying that you have to have that part of it is burnt on the mizbeach in order to have the din of hagasha, what about the minchas nesachim? That the whole thing is burnt on the mizbeach. That maybe that should also require hagasha. If you're saying that that's a prerequisite of having hagasha, is at least part of it is burnt on the mizbeach. Something that's fully burnt on the mizbeach should certainly require hagasha. Tamalei mevekriva. That's what the pasuk says. Vekriva, affecting marva fikta. But we already used vekriva. We used vekriva was the source according to Reb Shimon for a saita. So Gemara. The Gemara answers, we need it for, it's not just vehikriv, the pasuk could have said vehikriv, it says vehikriva, that it should be hakriv. It's going to say just this and not something else. So vehikriv is coming to add the saita, because it wasn't necessary to say vehikriv, because obviously that's what you're doing. So that adds the saita, and then it says vehikriva, that excludes the minchas nesachim. Minchas nesachim is the mincha that accompanies a shlomim and a oilo that is fully burnt on the mizbech. Why are we choosing the shar menachos and minchas nesachim? Let's exclude shar menachos, meaning of an isha and a guy, and to include the nesachim. I'm going to bring the other ones that all the other minchas are being brought by the person, and they're just a mincha on its own. I'm going to exclude the minchas nesachim that's brought along with the carbon. It's not coming for its own. They don't have a hagasha according to Reb Shimon. That's what the Torah says. V'higisha, only this that only this is hagasha, but not the minchas kain and minchas Kain Mashiach, the Minchas Chavitim. What are you saying? Vigisha is telling you that the Minchas Chayte and the Minchas Kain Mashiach don't need Hagasha. We need to say Vigisha to know that there is such a mitzvah of Hagasha. Where does it come from? If not, if the Torah didn't tell you, should be bring it close to Mizbech. How do we know there is such a thing? It could have said Vehigish. Vehigisha means this was Hogish and not something else. Why are including other minchas and when being Motzei minchas kain and minchas kain Mashiach? Other ones have two qualifications. First of all, there's some part of it that's burnt on the mizbech, which the kain that of a that of a kain Mashiach, the chavite kain gadol, and the minchas kain don't have. I'd say that the minchas kain is fully burnt on the mizbech. They're both burnt on the mizbech. Boys begalatzman, they both comes out v'yesh mehen lekeihanim, and some part of it goes to keihanim. The shtei halechem and lechem panim are excluded because no part of it goes on the mizbeach. It's all eaten. Minchas esachem she'ena begalatzman. Minchas esachem doesn't go for its own. It's minchas esachem is coming along with a different carbon. Minchas keihanim, minchas kain Mashiach she'en mehen lekeihanim. Those parts that don't have anything to kahen. So it comes out there are three qualifications that are needed for Hagash. And each one of these are knocked out by a different one. It has to be like Goldilocks. It has to be right in the middle. It has to be some part of it is burnt. It has to also be that some part of it is given to Kaihanim. If you're missing either one of them, then it doesn't get Hagash. So V'heirim Yachol B'kli. Torah says V'heirim, you should lift it up. Maybe that means you should lift it up at a kli instead of doing with his fingers. Tamalayim V'heirim Mimenu B'kumtzai. He should lift it up with his fingers, with his kaimitz. That means with his actual fingers, the kind does kmitza and not with a kli. These are two separate places where the Torah says V'heirim, but the second one it says B'kumtzai, so that tells you that the first one is also talking about B'kumtzai, not with a kli. Zok the Mishnah. Elu tunas snufa ve'ein tunas hagasha. These we were talking in the previous Mishnah. We first listed which things need hagasha. They need to be brought to the mizbech, but they don't need to be waved. Now I'm going to say the other way around. Those things that need to be waved, but they don't need hagasha. So we should just clarify. There are two types of waving, which we're going to come across. Sometimes you wave before the animal is shechted. You wave the animal. Or a
you physically do the wave? Do you physically wave it?
Yeah.
I mean, how do you? It's picked up and you go like this.
That's why Kahanim have to go to the gym. It's not just learning kachim. We also have to exercise our brains so we don't, for some reason, do piggle. You weren't here, but I've been talking for the last many years about the cupidity of these Kehanim, the foolishness of the Kehanim, that they go into such extremes to try to make things piggle. They have to do things on purpose and then say it out. They'd just be quiet. It would not be a problem. They have to have whole mesechtas, Kehanim messing things up with no gain to themselves. Anyway, I don't know, I guess this is a familiar rant to most of the people here. I feel like they're reflecting badly on me. Okay, so these things need tnufa. They need to be waved. They need to be picked up by the kayin. But into the zagasha, they don't need to be carried up to the mizbech and touched to the mizbech. These are things that the Torah says. The Torah says tnufa and the Torah says agasha. These are mitzvahs, just like, it says to put on tefillin and it says to whatever, to eat, to wear shad, not to wear shanas. Zaktamar, like shemen shal mitzayra, v'ashamai. We know that when someone becomes a mitzayra, he has a whole procedure for being mitzayra himself. And one of the things he needs is a light shemen that gets put on various parts of his body and spritzed in various places. And the asham that's brought by the mitzayra, these things need snufa, but they don't need to be brought to the mizbeach. V'habikurim, k'divrei Rebbe Elazar ben Yaakov. According to Rebbe Elazar ben Yaakov, bikurim, which is not a carbon per se, but it also, the Torah says on it, snufa, that it needs to be waved. Ve'imurei shalma yachid. The imurim of a shlomim that's brought by a yachid, meaning the parts that get burnt on the mizbeach. v'chazav v'shoik shalahen. In addition, the chazav v'shoik that go to Kehanim from Shlamim, that also needs to be waived. Now, these are things obviously that are waived after the shechita, not the live animal, but after the shechita. These are portions of the carbon. Echad hanoshim ve'echad noshim b'Yisrael v'loy ba'acherim. It applies to men and to women, but it applies to Yisrael and not others. The Gemara will explain what others is. Shtei halechem v'shtei shnei kiftzei atzeres. In addition, on Shavuos, we've come across a bunch of times the shtei halechem, the two minchas of lechem that are brought on Shavuos, shnei kiftzei atzeres, and the two sheep of shlamim that are brought on Shavuos. Those also need tnufa. Keseruai. So how does he do the tnufa them? Noisin shtei halechem al gabe shnei kvasim. He puts the shtei halechem on top of the two sheep. Ominech shtei yadav lamata. And he puts his two hands underneath. Moiluchu maybe mailu umoiri. And he picks up his hands. He picks them up, and then he puts them forward and back. And then he picks them up and down, which I think not exactly what we do with our lulav and esrog, but the same idea. The Gemara later on will talk about exactly how this is done. I'm not sure. I'm waiting eagerly to find out if he has to do both lambs at the same time. It seems like very onerous to have to do two lambs. And you have two people. And two people doing something at the same time only makes it harder. So you have two people at the same time picking up two lambs. I don't know what you do. You put the lamb one on top of each other. I don't know. I'm waiting to hear about that. In any case, that's what he has to do. He picks them up and he brings them. He puts them out and then he brings them back close and he picks them up and brings them down. Shenamar asher hunaf. Hunaf means to go in and out. Asher huram, that he picks up and puts down. Tnufa haisa b'mizrach. The tnufa was done on the east side of the mizbeach, which means to say even on the east side. The west side was closer to the heichal, so say you could even do it on the east side. V'hagasha b'mayrav. Hagasha has to be on the west side. Tnufa is kedemis l'hagashas. You do tnufa before you do hagasha, meaning with the live animal. We're not talking about the emurim and such. That obviously has to be after Hagasha, because Hagasha comes first. Minchas ha'omer or minchas kenais, the mincha of the omer and the minchas kenais, tunas Hagasha utnufa. They need both. Right? We're switching now to the third basket, the third group. We said first those that need Hagasha and no tnufa. Then we said those that need tnufa and not Hagasha. Now we're saying the things that need both. So the minchas ha'omer and the minchas kenais, which is a mincha of the saita, need both Hagasha and Tenufa. Lechem hapanim, the lechem hapanim that's put on the shulchan on every Shabbos, or minchas nesachem, the minchas that go together with the oila and the shlamim, ain't tu'unis le Hagasha le Tenufa. They require neither of these things. Rav Shimon Omer, gimel minin, gimel tu'unin gimel mitzvahs, shtayim b'chalachas. There are three types of minchas or hakravas that need three things, but only each one of these three meaning, these three types, only need two of them. Ushlishus ebohen, and the third one it doesn't. It has two of them, and the third one it doesn't. Ve'elohein, zivchei shalmei yachid, ve'zivchei shalmei tzibur, ve'asham mitzayra. All these three things, this is a shlamim of a yachid, someone who's menadev a shlamim, and the zivchei shalmei tzibur, which is the shnei kvasim on Atzeres, are the only shlamim that are brought by a tzibur, and the Asher Mitzayra, when the Mitzayra, these are the three types of karbanis that two of the three apply to all of them. It's not the same two. Zivchei shalmei yachid tu'unin smicha chayim. They need a smicha while on the animal, like we said before, like we said in the Mishnah earlier in the Mishnah, that you put your two hands on the keves and you pick it up. Utnufa shchutin, it's a shlamim, and like we said, the emurim and the chazav v'shoik of a shlamim, shalmei yachid, need a second tnufa. So you need a smicha before, and you need a tnufa when they're I'm sorry, we said a smicha, but not the smicha is mechayim. That's leaning his hands on it, and then you need a tnufa. So there's three things. The three things are smicha, tnufa, shchutin, and tnufa chayim. So the zivchei shalmi yachid and the zivchei shalmi yachid need a smicha beforehand and a tnufa after you shaft it. But eben tnufa is chayim, but there's no tnufa prior to shchit. Zivchei shalmi tzibur, which is what we discussed before, the shtei alechem to unin tnufa chayim. They need a tnufa while they're alive, like I misstated before. This is a tnufa. What we're talking about smicha, now we're talking about tnufa. They need a tnufa chayim, ushchutin. They also need their shlamim, so they need the shchutin, the tnufa of the emurim and of the chazav shaykh. They ban smicha, but they don't have it in smicha. Hashem mitzayra ton smicha. They need a smicha, utnufa chay, and they also need a tnufa prior to shechtin. They ain't by tnufa shachar, but it doesn't have the din of a shlam. It's not a shlam. It's an asham. The din of tnufa after shchita is only on a shlam. Okay, I think we'll stop over here. I think that's enough. I said the words hagasha and tnufa enough times for one night for everyone's taste.